This is something a bit different. I've done behind the scenes videos before occasionally on some animations I've done in the past, but I've never really delved into the process of making a short film of mine. So today I'm going to be talking about some of that. This is going to be a video taking you through the steps I took making my recent short film Bye Bye Benji. So this one kind of came about mainly from the fact that I wanted to create something that I could submit to a festival or competition, because I'd done loads of stuff in the past, but I'd never really submitted it anywhere. I'd done at school a very short film about bullying, and that managed to actually get into, I think it was a runner-up in the Malala Youth competition. And then recently, I think last year, I submitted All Too Much, one of my recent short films I did probably summer last year. I submitted that to Interfilm's Film of the Month, and that got a runner-up for that. That sort of gave me the incentive to want to create something for a festival or competition, and Bye Bye Benji came about. It turned out to be a number of firsts with this this short film actually. It was the first one I've ever done with other collaborators. It wasn't just me on my own for once. First one with no copyright infringement, because in previous short films I've used music and sometimes visuals from other different things that aren't obviously mine. So this was the first one which I went out to make sure that all of it was, you know, brand new material, created from scratch. It was the first one with diegetic sound. Is it diegetic sound? Is that the right term? Sound that's coming through the microphone. It's not been recorded later, or it's not been, you know, done through Foley or anything. Just pure sound from the mic, which I think is one of the film's failings, but I'll go on to that later. And it was also the first one with my brand new camera, the Lumix G80, which is a great camera. I absolutely adore it because, for one thing, handheld shots have become so much more of a pleasure, because the in-text stabilisation in it means that you can have a handheld shot and there's no, you know, wobble. So that's something I've absolutely adored. So, the film. It began as a sort of germ of an idea in this, my notebook. This is where most of my ideas sort of start now. I keep this by my bed, and if ever I sort of have something I want to, if something comes into my head, or if I've come back from somewhere, I'll just open this up and, you know, all sorts of ideas just written down in here. If it's just a title idea, if it's a line of dialogue, anything, I just put it in here so I've got it somewhere. I think that's something I'd really recommend actually. If you're, you know, sometimes struggling for thinking of ideas, just have something like this. I mean, or even just have your phone. I sometimes do that as well. Get on your notes, and whenever you think of something, write it down straight away, so you've always got it to refer back to, because there's some stuff in here which, you know, I've thought, oh, I don't know what I'll do with that right now, but then I've come back to it later on and gone, actually, yeah, let's develop that. So this is where Bye Bye Benji started as well. There's a sort of a page of notes there, including a few little sketches of costumes. Before being called Bye Bye Benji, it was actually originally titled Living in the Past, and that was because the whole central idea of this short film was the idea of flashbacks. That was the main thing I wanted to try and experiment with. Having the central character kind of reliving moments from the past as if they were happening in the present, if that makes sense. Hopefully, if you've seen the film, you'll understand what I mean by that. There was a lot of inspiration taken from the Inside Number 9 episode, The 12 Days of Christine, with Sheridan Smith, which has just some fantastic transitions in terms of the shifts back and forward in time. Spoiler alert for the episode, but it's basically about how in the moment before death, life flashes before your eyes. So it's a continuous, like, all these different moments in this central woman's life that sort of bookend themselves together into a condensed 30-minute space, if that makes sense. So the flashbacks kind of continuously flow from one to the next, even in the same shot. So we might shift from one character to the next, and in that little pan, there's been a shift of like a week. So I really wanted to have a short film that was entirely based around that sort of main premise. I think the shots that transition into those different moments in the film are kind of the first things that I came up with for those scenes. The rugby ball hitting Ozzy in the head, that was an instant thing. I sort of thought, you know, it comes out of nowhere, bang, we're into the next scene. So that's what I wanted to try with this. I didn't want to deliberately draw the audience's attention to the fact that this was a flashback straight away. My sort of main idea was that the audience don't twig until maybe halfway through the film, or maybe even by the end of the film, that what we've been seeing with Benji is all flashbacks, it's all happened in the past. And maybe for the first flashback, you might initially think it might be a continuity error in the fact that Ozzy is wearing the same clothes, except he's just not got his jacket on anymore. So the story was sort of built around that. A teenager trying to move on and struggling to move on from his best friend's death. Constantly sort of reliving and dwelling on moments of the past before finally realising that this isn't good for him and he has to move on. Now, I've really never dealt with grief firsthand. I mean, especially in recent years, I haven't really dealt with grief too much. But I've dealt with, obviously, losing people and having to move on. So I sort of drew from that experience more than anything else, really. Because that's what it's really about. I don't think it's necessarily about grief. I think it's about losing someone, no matter how, whether it is through death or through a relationship breakup or through just friends parting ways. I think that's the central theme to it, because it's common to everyone. I think everyone can relate to that. Also, with friendship being a very central theme to the story as well, I kind of drew on a lot of my own friendships, particularly my own friendship with my best friend Will, who featured in the film. He even said that actually when he first read the script, you know, looking through all these characters, he said that Ozzy was basically just like me and Benji was like him. So that's pretty much what I kind of did. I basically wrote the characters damn near ourselves, and that kind of allowed for naturalistic performances, because I mean a lot of the dialogue itself was kind of taken from our everyday conversations. I didn't want it to be cheesy and, you know, over the top. I wanted it to be simple, stripped back, and just this is how it is, and keep the language very, very normal, very everyday. And each of those scenes about their friendship is kind of crucial because it illustrates their friendship. When I was writing, I kept asking myself when I got to each scene, what's the point? Not what's the point of writing the script. Like, what's the point of this scene being here? I want to make sure that there's a point to it and it's not just there for padding. The band practice scene is there to sort of establish their friendship they have and let us know that this is a friendship that's lasted for years. And then the game of catch, the rugby ball scene, is kind of to show that, like every friendship, they have arguments and they're ultimately pointless. And then the bench scene is to show that both of them have the right advice for each other when they need it most. So the scripting process itself was very much just a process of writing it and, you know, drafting it and then going back through it with a fine comb. And I think the first draft was finished on early April. So this is the very first sort of draft of the script. As you can see, by that point it had actually become Bye Bye Benji, and I got all these alternate titles as well. Forget Me Not, Remember, which is actually the name of the poem at the end, and A Long and Winding Road, because obviously I had to try and get a Beatles title in there. I went through with my orange pen and just all the extra bits of stage directions there just to make it clear exactly what was going on, and, you know, little dialogue tweaks in terms of, you know, adding a few words here and there, taking a few bits out. If anything didn't sound naturalistic, trying to work out a way that that could sound right. Really, there wasn't an awful lot in terms of having to change the story, because I think I'd got the structure sorted before I'd even started writing, so I was happy with the story. It was just sort of going through it to make sure that I was really happy with everything and every little bit had been thought out, you know, properly. So after I'd finished scripting, the next part of the process was storyboarding, which is something I've never really done before. I've done it on occasion for like little parts of a film, but I've never done it for a whole thing. And the reason I did it was mainly because I was doing this with other people. It wasn't just me on my own. I didn't have as much time as I wanted to. I kind of wanted to make sure that our shooting day was effective and it wasn't wasting people's time. I wasn't faffing around trying to work out what do I want for this shot? What's the aim here? I wasn't thinking about what I wanted because I'd already thought about that. I'd already gone through it. So here's the storyboard. I sort of printed out a kind of a sort of crib sheet, I guess. I don't know what I'm talking about, but a sort of sheet that I could a template, that's it. There was a few tweaks, but for the most part, a lot of this stayed damn near the same. In fact, I think the first scene in, you know, the band practice scene was exactly as I'd pictured it in my head when I was writing it.
Hey!
Hey! You know, very, very basic stuff. I mean, you know, I'm no artist. That's meant to be me. It saved for a lot of thinking on the day and made sure that I had actually got everything shot as well, because I would have hated to have finished shooting and gone, right, that's it. Then come back, look through the footage and gone, didn't get that line shot, did we? It made sure that everything had been covered from numerous angles as well. There was some shots that I decided to get a line from a different angle as well, so I had a bit more choice in the edit. In future, I think I'd do that even more. I think I'd try and get loads more coverage. Storyboarding was actually really useful for this, and yeah, it helped a lot. It allowed me to sort of think through things a bit more and you know, make sure that I'd got everything done. So that was planning done. Now it was time to get people involved. So as well as myself, who would be directing the whole thing and then starring as Ozzy, I also got my friend Will in, who obviously I based sort of Benji off, so it's kind of perfect casting in a way. You couldn't get much better than that. He's an actor, I suppose. You know, he's on an actor-musician course at the minute, so I suppose you could call him, you know, a proper actor. And also I brought in Richard Lloyd, who I've collaborated on numerous occasions, not just in terms of the videos we've recently been doing on my channel and his channel, but also way back in school we were doing, you know, things for our film club and media group. I think we'd always been sort of saying we want to do a film together and, you know, a proper short film, so this was an opportunity to really have a go at one, and I'm sure we'll do a load more as well. Brought Richard in to film and sort of camera operate for the day, and also Richard helped out a lot by composing the score, but I'll go on to that later. So, the day was set for the 20th of April, shooting all planned out. I'd noted down all the shots I needed and a rough idea of how long it would take, and boy, was I wrong. I think I initially sort of thought, yeah, 3 or 4 hours tops would be, you know, what we need. So we were going to start at like 10ish, and I think we'd finish, you know, 2 at the latest, and we can get a lunch. I was sort of wrong about that. So the day started at around 10 as I planned, starting with the outdoor scenes because I wanted to make sure we got them shot first. It was a great day, really good lighting. I wanted to make sure we'd got them covered straight away, because if it started pissing it down, that would, you know, it wouldn't be good. And obviously, you know, like with anything, there was a few outtakes. Took us a few times, for example, to get me hit in the head with a rugby ball. Ah! And obviously my catching skills were put to the test too.
Yeah. Oh, move your...
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Move your ass.
Oh, Jesus.
Why do I have my hands ready?
Plus we constantly seem to forget about the one main rule of film, which is don't look at the camera.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the camera. Sorry to do that. Oh. Go look at the camera. You don't seem with it, mate. Do you look at the camera? You don't see... He doesn't seem with it. Only a joke, Ozzy. What's up with you? Look at the camera. Hey! Why don't I look at the camera? I'm gonna get a drink before we get going. Did you look at the camera?
Do I want one?
Yeah. Camera, do you want?
Did you look at the camera, or am I imagining that?
I can't remember.
And one of the many reasons why I think it took us so long was distractions. Top tip, never give Will a guitar before you're about to shoot a scene. Action.
Right.
We just seem to find so many ways to put each other off. I've been doing a few things.
Like Megan.
Oh,
sorry.
but that worked.
The pause, like Megan, Master's guess. But no one can see that, so this is like me going.
Action. The word. Richmond. Benji, you shall not pass!
What? What? Just knowing how thick those pens are in real life.
It's so you can obviously see the writing, alright? It's just like a massive board mark.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, then he goes,
I just know I feel so... Let's just get on with it. And obviously, as with any film, the lines are hard to get your head around. Sorry, I forgot my lines.
The best advice I can give is just move on.
How?
Just...
Absolutely fine.
Mate.
Forget about that time we did sledging over here.
Kick your legs back. Kick your legs back.
And then it's the line!
No, seriously, I am. I'm just happy you took my advice. To be honest, I'm just glad you finally took my advice and asked the out what I was. And if you don't, I'll get Ellie on you.
Oh god.
I'm just saying, don't think about it as much. You still think about her, just not every second of the bloody day.
Close enough, just forgot one bit.
What is it?
Put it to one side, which is the most important line of the whole fucking scene.
One other line that took us ages was, I think it was Will's last line about getting a drink. And I think by that point, it was the end of the day. It was, you know, insanity was starting to sink in. So I don't blame us for starting to lose it.
Thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink before we get going.
Thirsty. I'm going to get something to drink.
Thirsty. I'm gonna sorry, boy.
Thirsty.
I'm thirsty. I'm gonna go get a drink before we get going. Thirsty. I'm gonna go get a drink before we get going.
Okay, action. But we got through it. A lot of lessons were learnt, obviously. For one thing, as I said, great weather, but it was very hot weather. So, yeah, we didn't wear sunscreen or, you know, anything like that. So by the end of the day, we all had sunstroke. And I was very tired when I got home. Also, we were working in a public space, so not only did we have people actually walking into shot from time to time,
Just a little bit.
Let's get that.
but also there was a lot of background noise as well. Cars.
Fine, when you go fucking cars. I miss you, mate.
Fucking cars. Motorbikes.
Stop thinking about it.
We've got a motorbike. Dick. Nice one.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, fuck's sake, there's a fucking motorbike. Brum.
Cock it right up for us.
Brum.
Bells.
Daydreaming again?
Birds.
Everything's...
Even Richard's phone, which somehow I don't know how it managed to go off that many times actually. That's one of my main gripes about the film, I think. Not Richard's phone going off. The sound. I think, despite having a dead cat on my mic, which a dead cat is, it's this thing. It looks like a Yeti's, you know. Despite having that actually on the mic to stop the wind hitting it, it still wasn't great. It wasn't perfect. Obviously, on a proper short film, we'd have someone dealing with just the sound, you know, boom mic operator. But we didn't have that luxury here. Regardless of the sound stuff, the next day when I sat down to look at all the footage, I was very happy with what we had. I think Richard did a great job at framing some of those shots. I was really happy they were exactly as I'd pictured how I wanted them to be for the most part. So I was really happy with the look of it, definitely. The first draft was pieced together by the 23rd of April. That was mostly done, actually, aside from a few bits of colour grading that would be tweaked later on, and there was no music at all, aside from a placeholder track in for the credits at the end. But it was good enough to just send off to Richard, who would be composing the score for the piece. We sort of had a back and forth of messaging about, I sort of said, I'm not wanting so much music for it, I'm more wanting sort of ambience. I'm wanting that, you know, simple, minimalistic stuff. And he sent me a few sort of example tracks of this is what he was sort of thinking of, sort of Seigo Nakanolo's stuff from Doctor Who Series 11. Broadchurchy kind of stuff. And listening to those are exactly what I wanted, so it was good to know we were on the same sort of wavelength. And then a week or so later, Richard sent the files over with the finished score, and I was really happy with what turned out. There was only a tiny bit of tweaking needed in terms of just lengthening out the tracks in certain places, because what I'd done is I'd given Richard the specific time codes of what bits of the film I wanted to be scored, and he sort of used them as, you know, this is how long the track has to be and all that sort of stuff. All that needed to be done is I just wanted to have a little bit more on the end and the start of each track, just to sort of bridge, make it sort of flow a bit better, because looking at the initial edit with the music in, it felt very much like it was music, flashback scene of talking, music, flashback scene of talking, music, and it sort of felt very, this is the bit, yeah. So I wanted it just to be a bit more kind of, will flow from one to the next. So yeah, that's all that needed to be changed really. So after a few adjustments and tweaks, the final version was finished on the 15th of May and released on the 18th for the world to see. And I think I'm very happy with how it turned out. There's certainly bits I'd do differently. That's always the case with everything I make. But overall, I'm very happy. I think the message is good, and there's a lot of heart to it. So yeah, Bye Bye Benji is definitely one of the projects that I'm most happy with. And I will be submitting it to various film festivals and competitions and things, and regardless of whether it gets in or to any of them or not, I'll still be very happy with how it turned out. And it's certainly, you know, I can count it as maybe one of my first proper short films, in the fact that it's more collaborators, better tech, and yeah, overall I'm happy. So that's how I made it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to that. I hope you find it interesting. That's everything. So yeah. Bye. Bye. Fuck.
Hey!
You've been saying it for 10 years. Me, skip.
Kick your legs back!
Genuine banter.
Legs back!
Right, sorry. What a cool story, Mark. Okay, action. This is the take. This is the take. We're nearly finished.
All I think is Keith Chegwin now.
This is insanity. Okay.